Excellent. Welcome in. Good morning, everyone. We'll give people a couple minutes to log in, get started. As we get more people into our advisory today, go ahead and drop your name and your organization into the chat. We'd love to see who's here. Love to get connected with you all and start this conversation on our topic today. Thank you everyone for coming. We have a great program for you today. And we'll go ahead and get started in the next couple minutes here.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Dionisio. Good morning. Excellent. So I see a lot of people using the chat. Thank you very much. We'll give a couple more seconds here before we get started. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. We have a great program for you today. So as we get started here, we'll start with the introductions. Thank you for coming for today's LARC Regional Program Advisory on the entertainment industry. This session is being recorded and all participants and registrants will be emailed the PowerPoint slides and the lookbook at a later time. My name is Pablo Martinez, Assistant Program Manager for Workforce Development here at the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation. LAEDC is a nonprofit organization that serves LA County. Our mission is to reinvent our economy to collaboratively advance growth and prosperity for all. This advisory is brought to you in small part by our team at LAEDC, and we're very proud to be working with the Los Angeles Regional Consortium. What you can expect from today's program is the LA19 is leading industry educational partnerships to collaboratively strengthen our region's talent development ecosystem. So you can expect to see data-driven research on the supply and demand for talent, industry councils and regional program advisories like the one today, and developing work-based learning and employment opportunities between the participants. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Narne Makhijian, Chair and Assistant Vice President of the Los Angeles Regional Consortium.
Well, good morning, everyone. And thank you, LAEDC, Center of Excellence, and our LARC team for organizing today's Entertainment Regional Program Advisory. We're so grateful to our exceptional LA19 colleagues and our valuable industry partners for joining us. Your collaboration is so vital in this important work. The Los Angeles Regional Consortium is a collaboration of LA19's community colleges, and we are committed to providing accessible, affordable education that closes the skills gap and advances economic and social mobility. Our mission is to bridge the supply and demand gap by training a diverse, highly skilled, ready to meet the needs of region's industries. Today's focus is on the entertainment sector, a major economic driver in LA County, employing over 185,000 individuals across film, broadcasting, live performance, and digital media. Our colleges are actively preparing students in these programs, building a diverse talent pipeline ready to contribute to and transform the industry. Through today's discussion, we aim to strengthen collaboration.
Come only when I'm reprimanding you. Right, no, that's true. But
expanding pathways to sustainable careers and building a more inclusive and resilient workforce for the future. Thank you again for your partnership and engagement today. We look forward to your insights.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Makhijian. Next, I'd like to also introduce for our opening words, our opening statement, Jermaine Hampton, Vice President of Workforce Development and Special Projects at LAEDC.
Hello, good morning. I hope everyone is well. And thank you for those words, Dr. Makhijian. And so just wanted to hop on real quick and say thank you to all of our partners. Thank you to all of our college faculty and staff who are part of this call. I'm really looking forward to a vibrant conversation. Obviously, this sector is extremely important to the region. And we want to change a lot of the perception of the region. I mean, we've lost a lot of production to other states, but at the end of the day, LA is still the entertainment capital of the world. And there are still tons of opportunities within this sector, and particularly on the back office side, the back end production side of the business. There's lots of labor, supported union jobs that pay high, good living wages, and we want to make sure that we're uplifting that. In addition to that, just want to highlight the fact that LADC is a 501c3 or a nonprofit organization that does serve all of LA County, all 88 cities and 100 plus unincorporated areas. And LADC essentially integrates a comprehensive strategy through engagement, research, business assistance, workforce development, and international trade. This approach supports industry cluster development and regional growth through robust public and private partnerships, fostering a more equitable and sustainable economic landscape. And so as we have that conversation today and you are able to see the data and the information, we really encourage you all to continue to collaborate and have action meetings to follow up with us so that we can actually begin working and implementing solutions after we have this conversation today. So again, thank you to the Los Angeles Regional Consortium for bringing us all together. All of the 19 colleges that are part of our region and the faculty that are on the call, and obviously our industry partners who are on the call today. And looking forward to a vibrant conversation. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Jermaine. Next up, I'd like to introduce from our very own team, the Institute of Applied Economics here at LAEDC, Matthew Skyberg, Senior GIS Research Analyst, to present the data on the current industry.
Great, thank you, Pablo. So yeah, I'm with the Institute for Applied Economics, which is the research arm at LAEDC. And today I'm going to be sharing some of the key insights from our recent analysis of the entertainment industry in Los Angeles County. Next slide. So the entertainment industry is a cultural and economic cornerstone of Southern California, as most of us know. But it's an evolving industry. It's driven by shifts in technology and changing consumer expectations. So on-demand platforms and immersive formats and interactive content have transitioned and transformed how we engage with entertainment. In economic terms, the industry is defined by three major NAICS groups. So we have motion picture and sound recording, which involves everything from major film studios and music producers to post-production and technical services. We have broadcasting and content providers, which covers traditional TV and radio, as well as streaming platforms and digital content creators, adapting to this mobile-first audiences. And then performing and spectator sports, which encompasses live theater, concerts, sports teams, independent artists, and promoters, as well as ticketing services. So together, these three segments form the backbone of the entertainment industry. Next slide. So looking at the current landscape and employment levels in the past decade, we can see that the entertainment industry employed nearly 186,000 people in 2014. The entertainment industry peaked at more than 225,000 workers in 2022. But the employment levels have fluctuated throughout this period, and it's shaped by cyclical trends, labor disruptions, and the far-reaching impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the sharpest decline came in 2020 when employment fell to just over 166,500 jobs. And that's as production halted and live events were canceled nationwide. So from that low point, the industry saw a strong rebound, grew by more than 35% between 2020 and 2022, adding nearly 60,000 jobs in just 2 years. However, this momentum wasn't sustained, and in 2023, employment fell again to about 185,000 jobs, which effectively wiped out much of this post-pandemic recovery. And recent labor actions in the industry, including strikes in 2023, contributed to production delays and temporary employment declines. Next slide. So over the past decade, the structure of employment in the entertainment industry has shifted, even as the total jobs remained pretty much stable. So motion picture and sound recording industries has remained the largest segment, but their share has declined by about 6 percentage points. This drop reflects challenges like production slowdowns, labor disputes, and changing media consumption. Broadcasting and content providers maintained a consistent 15% share during this time. So while the segment's adapted to digital platforms, its workforce has remained relatively flat, highlighting a more mature and stable segment. And the biggest growth came in performing arts and spectator sports, which increased their share from 20% to 26%. So employment growth was driven by return of live events and rising demand for in-person cultural experiences. And these changes just reveal how the industry is evolving, with live performance gaining ground and traditional media adapting to new audience expectations. Next slide. So looking at the wages in entertainment, we can see that they're well above the county average. At the top is performing arts and spectator sports, which had over $210,000 as an average wage. Close behind was broadcasting and content providers at around $209,500. So these figures are more than 2.5 times the county average. And even at the lowest end, the motion picture and sound recording industry still offered wages around $136,000, which is nearly double the county average. And overall, the entertainment industry posted an average annual wage of about $166,900. So these high earnings speak to the specialized skills required and the global value created by this sector, especially in Southern California, which is one of the world's leading creative capitals. Next slide. So as we look at the real wage growth and adjust for inflation, we can see a little more nuanced picture of how wages have changed across the entertainment industry in the past decade. Broadcasting and content providers saw the strongest real wage growth. It was up 26.4% from 2014 to 2023, just reflecting a rising demand for digital media, streaming platforms, and skilled multimedia talent. Motion picture and sound recordings experienced a slight decline of 1.2%. This was, despite nominal gains and factors like project-based employment, production disruptions, and labor actions likely contributed to this flattening of real wage compensation. And the most significant drop occurred in performing arts and spectator sports, where real wages fell by 12.9%. So while this group post some of the highest nominal earnings, real wages declined due to inflation and the uneven recovery of live events, as well as an increased reliance on gig-based and contract work. So across the entire entertainment industry, real wages increased by just 2.6% this time, signaling modest overall growth. Next slide. So as we look at employment levels forecasted through 2028, we can see that total employment in the industry is projected to decline slightly over the next 5 years. The biggest contraction is expected in motion picture and sound recording industries. They're expected to lose more than 1,200 jobs in this time, just reflecting those ongoing challenges facing traditional film and television production, such as cost pressures, industry disruption, and evolving content delivery methods. At the same time, the other segments are expected to grow. So broadcasting and content providers are expected to add about 2,000 jobs, driven by the continued demand for streaming and digital content. And performing arts and spectator sports is expected to see the strongest growth, adding over 5,400 jobs as live events and cultural programming continue to rebound and expand. So together, these trends highlight a gradual shift in the industry's employment base from traditional production to more flexible, experience-driven, and digitally enabled roles. Next slide. So we look at the employment growth by segment, we can see these very different trajectories. So performing arts spectator sports forecast to have the fastest growth at 11.3%. Broadcasting and content providers follows at 7%. And motion picture and sound is expected to decline by over 11%. So altogether, this forecast, again, just points to industry transition, shifting away from legacy models and towards new forms of experience-driven and digitally distributed entertainment. Next slide. So this slide shows, takes a look at unique job postings from 2014 to 2024 and sees how they evolved over the years. The total number of job postings peaked in 2022 when they reached nearly 33,000 unique postings, which is more than double the number seen in 2014. But the demand has since cooled significantly, with postings cut by more than half in 2023 and declining slightly again in 2024 to around 12,000. So while demand has tapered, the data shows a clear shift in workforce needs, favoring digital content and live entertainment, with less growth in those traditional film and recording roles. Next slide. So as we look at how these job postings have shifted across the entertainment industry segments year by year, we can see that motion picture and sound led job postings across all years. They peaked in 2022 with nearly 16,000 postings, but the segment saw a sharp decline, dropping by over 5,200 postings in both 2023 and 2024. Broadcasting and content providers also peaked in 2022 with close to 9,800 postings before declining to about 3,800 in 2023. But they did have a slight rebound in 2024 to 4,100. And then performing arts and spectator sports showed steady growth through 2022 at over 7,300 postings. But the postings have declined to about 4,700 in 2023 and dropped further to 2,600 in 2024. So this might be reflecting some seasonal hiring cycles or market saturation and live event staffing. But altogether, these trends indicate a clear post-pandemic correction. And after a surge in hiring to meet up that pent-up demand in 2021 and 2022, employers appear to be scaling back, leading to more cautious labor demand across all segments. Next slide. So this slide highlights the high level of volatility in job postings across the industry, looking at the year-to-year growth or decline. All segments experience this volatility. Performing arts and spectator sports surged to over 130% in 2018, but they dropped sharply in 2020 and in 2024. Motion picture and sound recording swung between positive 105% and negative 66%. And broadcasting and content providers also fluctuated, tied to shifting digital strategies and content demand. So across all segments, these year-over-year changes reveal a common theme that it's a highly reactive labor market shaped by external shocks and evolving technologies and the structural transformation that we're seeing within the entertainment economy. Next slide. So from 2014 to 2024, there were 5 companies that accounted for a significant share of job postings in the entertainment industry. Disney led by a wide margin to over 50,000 job postings in this decade. These roles span from film production, streaming services, theme park operations, and media networks, just highlighting Disney's dominance across multiple segments in the industry. NBC ranked second with over 23,000 postings, reflecting a strong footprint in television broadcasting, digital content, and studio operations. CBS followed with more than 7,400 postings, focused on network programming, production support, and local station staffing. And Sony Pictures posted around 7,200 jobs, which are supporting roles in film, television, and global distribution. And then Netflix had nearly 5,000 posting, rounding out the top 5. And its rapid expansion into original content and global streaming has created consistent demand for production, tech, and creative roles. So together, these employers reflect the diverse and evolving structure of the entertainment workforce. From legacy networks to streaming leaders, all playing a major role in both talent development and job creation across the region. Next slide. So as we look at just their share of their postings in this time frame, we can see that Disney alone made up 28% of postings. NBC followed with 13%, and CBS, Sony, and Netflix each contributed 3 to 4%. So they're over half of all job postings came from these 5 companies. The remaining 48% of job postings were distributed among hundreds of other employers, including production companies, digital studios, post-production houses, and independent media firms. And this level of concentration shows how just a small number of firms drive a large portion of hiring activity. playing a key role in employment trends, workforce needs, and opportunities throughout the entertainment sector. Next slide. So looking at the three segments of the entertainment industry and how they're concentrated in job postings, we can see that the top 5 made up 74% of job postings in motion picture and sound, and 70% of broadcasting and content providers. Well, in performing arts and spectator sports, it's more fragmented, where the top 5 made up just 28% of jobs. So this just highlights the differences in the structure of each segment, shapes the workforce dynamics. So film and broadcast tends to be more concentrated among large employers, while performing arts and live events offers a more dispersed range of employment options across the region. Next slide. So now we'll take a look at the industry demographics, starting with age. So the workforce, entertainment workforce closely mirrors county averages and age groups, but it does stand out in a few. So 44% of workers are aged 25 to 44, which is slightly above county average, showing a typical early to mid-career presence. Only 4.8% are under 25, which is less than half of the countywide average. And this is suggesting there's fewer entry-level roles or early career access. Over 37% are ages 45 to 64, which is almost identical to the countywide average. But what's really unique is that 13.4% of workers are 65 or older. So that's 5 percentage points higher than the countywide average. And this reflects the role of freelance work, consulting, or passion-driven careers that extend well into later life. And overall, the industry skews away from younger workers in sports, longer working lives for experienced professionals. Next slide. So turning to educational attainment, we can see that the entertainment industry is a highly educated workforce. Over 40% of workers hold a bachelor's degree or higher, which is significantly above the countywide average of 26.3%. Another 26.7% have some college or an associate degree. So this shows a strong demand for post-secondary education and that the industry is still accessible to community college graduates. And then only 27% have a high school diploma or less, which is well below the county's 38% average. And just 9.5% have less than a high school diploma, which is also less than the county average. So this overall, the data shows that the entertainment industry favors a more educated and experienced workforce. Next slide. So looking at the race and ethnicity of workers, we can see that white workers make up nearly 60% of the workforce. So this is well above the 33.4% countywide average. While Hispanic workers only make up 17.7% of the industry, which is far below their 40.3% share across all industries. Asian workers accounted for 9.5% compared to 16% countywide, so they're also underrepresented. And Black workers are slightly better represented at 10.1%, which is above the 7.7 countywide average. But overall, the industry shows a clear underrepresentation of Hispanic and Asian workers. And this points to a need for more inclusive hiring and talent development. Next slide. So the entertainment industry also continues to be male dominated at 59% male, compared to the countywide average, which is just slightly female dominated, or not dominated, but female presence. So this gender gap is especially apparent in production, technical, and performance roles, where women are often underrepresented. And as this industry continues to evolve across digital platforms, live formats, closing this gap is really represents a key opportunity for gender equity. So next slide. So just looking at this breakdown across the three industry segments, starting with gender and education, we can kind of see some of the more nuances that occur in these segments. The motion picture and sound recording has the widest gender gap, where there's 61% male. And broadcasting and content providers and performing arts and spectator sports are slightly more balanced, but they're still above 60 or 56% male. In terms of education, broadcasting and content providers leads the industry, where nearly half its workers have a bachelor's degree or higher, compared to the 41% motion picture and sound recording and 32% in performing art and spectator sports. The share of workers with some college or an associate degree ranges from 23.7% in broadcasting to over 27% in both motion picture and sound and performing arts and spectator sports. So this reinforces the industry's demand for post-secondary credentials. Next slide. So now just looking at the age and race and ethnicity of these industry segments, we can see the motion picture and sound recording has the oldest workforce, where more than a third of its workers are over 55 years of age, and 17% are over 65, which is nearly double the county average. In contrast, performing arts and spectator sports has the youngest workforce with 8.4% under the age of 25, and more than half are under the age of 45. And broadcasting and content provider sits in the middle and has the largest share of mid-career professionals that are aged 25 to 44. On race and ethnicity, right workers are overrepresented in every segment, but especially in motion picture and sound recording, where they account for 64% of the workforce compared to just 33% countywide. Hispanic workers are significantly underrepresented across all segments, but especially in motion picture and sound recording, where they're at just 14.8%. Asian workers are represented in broadcasting and content providers, where they make up over 20%, which is above the county average, but in the other segments, they are below. And then Black workers are better represented in motion picture and sound recording and performing arts and spectator sports, where they're at around 10%, which is slightly above the countywide average. So together, these trends point to longstanding industry divides, and it highlights where there's opportunity to improve access and inclusion. All right, next slide. So finally, we'll close out with a few key takeaways. So employment in the entertainment industry rebounded after the pandemic, but then it did drop again in 2023, and it's expected to remain relatively flat through 2028. This is being driven by job losses in traditional film, while live and digital roles continue to see growth offsetting that. There were over 178,000 job postings between 2024 and 2014, or 2014 to 2024, with motion picture and sound recording accounting for the largest share. Wages are strong, very strong, averaging 166,900, with broadcasting and content providers experiencing the largest real wage gains. And the workforce is 59% male, with a high level of education. So over 40% had bachelor's degree or higher. Motion picture and sound recording skews older, while performing arts and spectator sports draws a younger workforce. And right workers are overrepresented, while Hispanic and Asian workers remain underrepresented. And finally, the top employers like Disney, NBC, and Netflix made up nearly half of all job postings, while hiring in performing arts and spectator sports is more widely distributed, reflecting the more diverse employer base. All right, next slide. So thank you, everyone, for your time and attention today. If you have any questions on the data, or if you want to explore any of this further, feel free to reach out to me at matthew.skyberg@laedc.org. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Matthew, for that presentation. We appreciate the presentation through that data. The next on our agenda, I'd like to introduce to present the findings and data on the current programs offered at the LA19 Community Colleges, Luke Meyer, Director at the Center of Excellence, hosted at Mount San Antonio College.
Thank you, Pablo, and thank you everyone for joining us. I'm going to go through some of our supply side information, programs at our community colleges, some student demographics, some illustrative program titles, and I'll try to be quick so that we can get to the discussion. So I know that's what everybody's waiting for. So go ahead, Pablo. Next slide. So just off the top, looking at the big picture, the majority of our colleges offer programs in this space. There are actually 65 unique programs across the 5 top codes that we used for this analysis. And of course, this is not exhaustive. There are other programs. I saw one registrant asking about dance. There are many commercial dance programs offered at our colleges as well. Just a little bit removed from exactly what we're talking about today. Within those 65 programs, over 100 unique awards, so certificates of achievement and associate degrees offered, nearly 4,000 students, and nearly 700 awards issued annually. You can see across those top codes there which colleges offer those programs. The most popular would be the television, including combined TV, film, and video there, offered by the majority of our colleges. Some of the illustrative job titles related to grip and lighting, documentary film production, virtual production, a relatively newer space that our colleges are getting into and are very interested in, digital film editing, post-production, cinematography, DaVinci Resolve techniques, and many others that you can see there. These are all listed in the lookbook as well. Next slide. Looking at the most recent 3-year period, and I just noticed that these dates are 1 year behind. So shift those a little bit to the left. The first year that we have data for is 2021-22, then 22-23, and that last year should be 2023-24. So as you can see, the number of awards issued in this space has increased over time, with an average of 765 awards issued annually, with, again, the television program issuing the biggest share of awards, followed by film production. Those two combined account for 92% of awards in this area. And the increase over this time frame has been 24%. So students are interested in this area. Next slide. This is a look at our 19 regional colleges, the number of students enrolled. So you can see leading up to the COVID-19 pandemic, student enrollment increased. And then with the COVID-19 stopping, shoot days, and then the dual strikes between writers and actors, decreased some enrollments, but steadily increasing in the last couple years. And so we're going to look more closely at those almost 3,800 students in the most recent year on the next slide. You can see here how they're distributed across colleges, with LA Valley leading the way with the most students enrolled, followed by Mount SAC, our host college, and Long Beach, each enrolling over 600 students. And you can see with Pasadena, El Camino, and Santa Monica all enrolling over 300 students, and on down the line. Next. Now, student demographics. So this is important, as Matt went through the industry demographics. It looks like a lot of these industries are predominantly male, predominantly white. So we do have mostly male added to the tune of 54%, but we have a lot of females enrolled in our pathways. And then I think the right side, in terms of race and ethnicity, is more important. Only a quarter of our students are white, with more than almost half identifying as Hispanic. So we got to get these folks into the labor market to create a more equitable workplace for all of us in LA. As you can see, our students are young, but also distributed across the board. But with 60-some% being 24 and younger, this attracts a lot of our younger students into these pathways. Next slide. Now, the next 4 slides, we're going to look at student employment outcomes. So in the blue, we have the programs associated with radio and TV compared to the outcomes for all of our CTE programs across the board. With the exception of 2020-21, you can see that fewer students, or a lower portion of students, are finding jobs in their field of study with these outcomes. So that speaks to the difficulty that they have breaking into this industry. Whereas we have about 3 out of every 4 across CTE programs on average finding a job in their field of study. If we could get back to that 2020-21 with nearly 8 out of 10 finding a job in their field of study, that would be incredible. Next slide. Now, this is the one metric where our students in this area shine compared to the average across all, where their median change in earnings. So taking what they earn before entering their program with what they're earning after, and you can see that our students leaving radio and TV programs are increasing their earnings, which sounds great on paper. So either they're earning more, or maybe their earnings were less leading into it. And the next slide sheds a little bit more light on this metric. So you can go to that. This is the most concerning, I would say. So you can see in red, students on average exiting CTE programs has gradually increased, peaking in our last year just over $43,000, earning just above a living wage at the time. However, our students in radio and TV lag that by about $12,000. And so it could be due to a number of factors. The prevalence of gig work in this industry compared to other industries. Could be unstable employment patterns resulting from the tumultuous employment with strikes and the impacts of COVID-19 and shoot days being down. Or it could just be simply low wages for entry-level workers in this space. It's good that we have employers that on the call that can shed some light on some of this. So we would love to see this get above the living wage, where our students can actually support themselves and in many cases their families. Next slide. And again, another sobering statistic on our students. Exiting, you can see across all programs, about 4 out of 10 are earning a living wage, compared to the most recent 22% from these radio and TV programs. So we would love to see this at 100 across the board. So we need to figure out a what do I want to say, a better pathway for our students to have stable employment so that they can actually enjoy working in this space and not have to scrape to make ends meet. Now, the next few slides, we're going to look at some of our target occupations. So these are some of the occupations that our programs train directly for. You can see 2 of them typically require a bachelor's degree in film and video editors, and the camera operators for TV, video, and film. The reason why we include those is because there is about 35% of the incumbent work base that has less than a bachelor's degree. So there are, I should say, opportunities for students in those roles, despite that bachelor's as the typical entry-level education. The more suitable roles would be in the AV technicians, the sound engineering technicians, and the lighting technicians. You can see in the middle there the average annual openings right there in the center. That's how many job opportunities there are each year. Despite the red decline for 4 out of the 5, people leave the job, change jobs, retire. That leaves a vacancy that needs to be filled. And then you can see the wage ranges from the entry level or 25th percentile to the median hourly earnings. Those in red fall below LA County's current self-sufficiency standard of $24.03 per hour for a single adult with no children. So you can see that as they reach the median, presumably with experience in their role, they are able to support themselves, in many cases their families, but those entry-level wages are concerning for 3 out of the 5. Next. So we did a similar job posting analysis. Matt looked at many other years and he looked by industry. We looked specifically at the last year for those 5 target occupations. And you can see that the top 2 are the ones that typically require a bachelor's degree, with over 600 job postings apiece. The AV technicians, over 500, and followed by lighting technicians and sound engineering technicians. So we're analyzing just over 2,400 job postings during the most recent year. Next slide. Here we have the job titles that come up most frequently in those job postings. So we look at occupations, but people speak job titles. All of those job titles are then rolled up into an occupation to capture the most recent statistics. But you can see from videographers to video editors, AV technicians, drone pilots factored into this as well, event videographers, home theater specialists, and you can see the employers listed there on the right, from Encore, Best Buy in some of the cases, that's a little bit removed from exactly what we're looking at. That would be some of the AV technicians, doing stereo installs and other things, and home theater setups, followed by TikTok, NBC, see Amazon, Live Nation doing the event production. And one of those is a staffing pattern, Insight Global. And you can see the education institutions in Cal State, along with UC. Next slide. This shows the advertised wage trend over the last 12 months. This has mostly stayed kind of linear, increased, peaking in February of 25 at just over 70,000 on average, and then taking a pretty precipitous drop down to 58,000 in March. And that's to be expected. There's a lot of noise with these job postings, and so this will continue to fluctuate, but on average, we're looking in the $60,000 range. And then you can see the postings by city. Unsurprisingly, LA leading the way with over 1,400, more than half of these postings. So that is the data that I have for you today. My contact information is on the next slide, and looking forward to hearing from our employers and our faculty to see how we can get our students jobs in this industry and hopefully, rebound and get back to pre-pandemic levels of employment. So thank you very much for having me, and look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you, Luke, for the presentation. We will now be moving into our roundtable discussion panel with our invited industry experts. So I invite you to stay muted throughout the discussion and use the chat box for any questions that you may think of. Drop them into the chat. We'll be fielding questions, and at the end of the moderated discussion, we'll have a short Q&A as well. So today, our panel will be moderated by our Director of Workforce Development here at LADC, Jose Pelayo, and also moderated by Alicia Nguyen, our Program Manager for Workforce Development. So it is my pleasure to introduce, for our first panelist, Michael Johnson, Director of Operations at Electric Now and Electric Entertainment. Michael Johnson has worked to develop Electric Entertainment's FAST channel and OTT app, Electric Now. From its inception in 2019, Michael manages all aspects of Electric Now, including the day-to-day overall maintenance of the application and channel. Next, I'd like to introduce Bryce Lauren Walker, Senior Manager of Talent Relations at Sesame Workshop. Bryce Lauren Walker is a two-time Emmy Award-winning producer and a true storyteller at heart. Born and raised in New York and a proud Haitian American, she brings passion, purpose, and a deep love for representation to every project she touches. As a producer on Sesame Street, Bryce Lauren doesn't just create content, she helps shape the way children see themselves in the world. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce Ann Whitney McCombs. Ann Whitney McCombs is the Director of Talent Acquisition at Skydance Animation, where she leads talent strategy for projects like Raygun and other features. With a strong background in creative recruitment within the animation industry, Ann Whitney brings extensive experience in building and nurturing talent pipelines. And last but not least, Dionisio Tafoya, President and Creative Director at Dionysius Creative, LLC. Dionisio is a multidisciplined media visionary working in traditional cinema and developing digital immersive experiences for entertainment and educational purposes. He is founder and president of Dionysius Creative, a creative media solutions company. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jose.
Thank you, Pablo. As Pablo mentioned, my name is Jose Pelayo. I am the Director of Workforce Development with LADC. I want to start off by thanking everyone in attendance, from faculty and deans to Lark, to Luke with the Center of Excellence, and Matthew with the great data. I think it's a lot to unpack, and very excited to get engaged with industry. Very excited to kind of get into conversation. For me, before we jump in, a few overwhelming kind of components and thoughts. One is that definitely the industry has experienced a lot of obstacles. There's a lot of trends that are affecting the industry. However, it's still a thriving industry here in the LA region, a lot of opportunity for sustainable wages. And then for me, one of the biggest components is that we just got to do a better job as a region to make it more diverse, specifically with minorities being underrepresented. But on the supply side, we see that we do have the talent here, and kind of figuring out how we can collaborate, and how we can find solutions to kind of make this ecosystem continue to grow in the LA region. With that being said, I like to go around first and kind of give a quick, maybe 1 minute opportunity to introduce yourself and speak a little bit about the work you are doing in your organization that you're presenting. So Bryce, if you want to go first, the floor is yours.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm so excited to be here. So I'm a producer on Sesame Street. I am local in New York, so I am there. So I pretty much oversee from pre-production to production. We're currently in production for season 56 right now, and then post-production as well. I'm also a diversity, equity, and inclusion advocate here at Sesame Workshop. So looking at content through a DEI lens. So not just Sesame Street, but all of our content, like our podcasts, our themed entertainment, our social media posts, all that kind of stuff. And then as well as the senior manager of talent relations here at Sesame. So, hiring our PAs as well, and also booking our celebs on the show. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to this conversation with everyone. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Amazing resume. And Whitney, I want to be a gentleman, make sure that you go next. So the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ann Whitney, McComb's last name. I'm really excited to be speaking to you all. I'm the Director of Talent Acquisition at Skydance Animation. You might ask, who is Skydance Animation? You might know us from our live action branches. They recently did like Top Gun Maverick. They started off with a bang with True Grit, and they're in the live action space, and animation is kind of our newer division. We released Spellbound on Netflix recently. The Search for Wandala Season 2 is on Apple TV+. And at Skydance, I hire and specialize in more of the creative roles. So the artists, visual development artists, storyboard artists. If you're kind of trying to pipeline into those higher level creative roles, I also support that. But then I also support a lot of other roles at Skydance Animation. So I hire for our overhead departments, a lot of our production roles. So like our PAs, if you're talking entry level opportunities. And then we recently, being kind of a newer animation studio, started up our internship programs and apprentice programs, which we're really excited about. And I'm kind of leading the formation of those programs from there. So it's a really great time at Skydance.
Thank you. Amazing work. Michael, the floor is yours.
Jose, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Johnson. I am the Director of Operations for Electric Now. Electric Now is a free ad-supported streaming TV service or FAST channel owned by our parent company, Electric Entertainment, founded by writer and producer Dean Devlin, who wrote famously Independence Day, Stargate, the producer of Leverage, Little Librarians, and many other feature films and TV series. My purview is mainly within the streaming space, as I manage our FAST channel. I have a lot of active conversations with a lot of platform partners such as Prime Video, Tubi, Pluto, the Roku channel, Samsung TV Plus, the list goes on and on. As well as other app developers, as we manage content and deliver content through our OTT app platform, and working with other OEM providers. So I'm really happy to join the call and offer my insight and talk about any technical challenges your professors or students may be facing.
Thank you, Michael. And last but not least, Dionisio, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me here. I'm really impressed by all of the people that are on this panel. I'm grateful to be included. My name is Dionisio Tafoya. I am the president of Dionysus Creative. We are a live events production, design, and management company. We have pivoted out of the traditional film and entertainment, film and television sector, where I was a scenic artist and designer. I'm also on the board of directors for the Art Directors Guild Local 800, where I'm their chair of professional development. And we are advocates of developing students into the entertainment sector across all platforms, which is including gaming, traditional film and television, live events sector, as well as like trade show activations and such. My company does have a internship program, which we are working with the San Gabriel Valley area, the K-12 Foothill Consortium, to do in-school activations with high school students and looking to get more into the college sector as well. So that way we can, I was looking at this data and just like seeing clear chasms of, necessary transformations that need to be, there's obviously a gap in fulfilling the live entertainment portion, and also an inclusivity gap with minorities. Like, great, and so I'm definitely looking forward to hearing everybody's opinion on this, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. I think I can speak for everyone by saying we are very thankful for the panel. I think you guys bring an array of different perspective, and your guys' resume is very amazing. So I think we will have great conversation. The first question that I have for the entire panelists, and open it up to everyone, is kind of, I think, a heavy question that has been lingering around for quite some time. But what are the current trends and challenges in the entertainment industry that the educational institutes should be aware of? And again, I want to open it up to the entire panel. So if anyone wants to jump in first and kind of address that question.
I can jump in. So I think one of the trends, it's like, a lot of people are consuming short form content. So a lot of YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Instagram Reels, and a lot of these Gen Zs they know how to be able to create this content because they're doing it into their everyday lives. So that is one thing that I've seen a lot, especially within like children's media. And speaking a little bit about Sesame, a lot of the kids, Sesame Street, if folks don't know, it's a 30-minute magazine format. So a lot of kids are watching, like, for example, Bluey, which is 7 minutes. The attention span of kids it's very, very short. So they're not sitting and watching. And we've done research on our end with kids are not watching 30 minutes of Sesame Street, unfortunately, anymore. So we're kind of having to navigate that and kind of trying to reimagine what this new Sesame might look like for the future, which is quite interesting. Because I know when I was younger, I grew up watching it and I sat the entire time watching the show, and back then it was an hour. So it's just, you can see as we keep on moving forward, it's like content, folks don't have the attention span to sit and watch a 30-minute, let alone, hour long show. And, obviously, the rise of AI is also a trend, and it can be taboo for certain folks. And, there are some folks that are using it as a reference as well. I know that's a question later on, so I won't get into the nitty-gritty of AI, but yeah.
Thank you, Bryce. I think you made some great points. I think it's crucial to understand, the generation that it's taking over and the need for short-term storytelling, and then kind of getting to those components which is kind of more direct. And then I think the AI is something that we're all going to address later in this panel. But yeah, anyone else wants to go next and kind of want to address the question, any trends or challenges that the educational institute should be aware of?
Yeah, I can dive in. I think along those lines that Bryce had mentioned regarding short form and vertical video content, I think one of the mistakes a lot of my peers make, they consider vertical video and social content is really just its own kind of niche category, and they're not really thinking of a full 360 ecosystem regarding content marketing, regarding storytelling. And I suppose my point being is that it's really about, for content creation or for filmmakers, it's about crafting a compelling story, and that works in favor of streaming. We're really trying to elongate the view duration, how long someone is watching content, but it's not just necessarily creating content for content's sake, but content that is compelling, content that's going to be engaging. And so I think as we have a saturation of short form content, people's attention spans start to dwindle down because they've seen that content before. They've seen where the story goes. It's a little bit predictable. So we have to find new creative ways as a writer, as a storyteller, to keep the audience engaged. Of course, you're not going to get overly dramatic, within Sesame Street, super, you're not going to have Law and Order on Sesame Street. But of course, something that's going to be new and engaging for that audience that they're going to be the will to or compelled to stay on and watch as long as possible. And I think with AI and integration, I know we're going to dive into that further, but I think there are a lot of thoughts regarding just generative AI, but there's a lot of potential regarding AI analysis, content recognition, just ways to improve operational efficiency. That I think some of our potentially new hires don't really consider that when they enter a workspace. They're really just thinking of generative AI and creating fun short form content, but there's so much more opportunity to understand how AI can help improve business efficiency and operations.
The company I work for is a little bit more of that traditional media theatrical release structure, and that's definitely changing. Obviously, we hear a lot in the news about the theatrical release and how it's not turning as much of a profit. But then in the animation space, we are dominating the theatrical space. Inside Out 2 had a huge box office. Moana 2 did super well. We saw $1 billion with Mario. The Minions sing, and they dominate in the streaming platforms as well. But the theatrical release kind of structure has definitely changed in how you approach the market. And those streamers like Amazon, Netflix, Apple TV Plus, Paramount has their own, NBC has their own, and how you reach your audience is different and how they market those is different. You're not seeing a lot of marketing pushes in the streaming platform. They just kind of see what the consumers latch onto and kind of grab from there. So where films go and television shows and how they're marketed and how they reach their audience has changed. And I don't think our businesses have fully wrapped their heads around how do we get people's eyes on this when you're flooded with these huge libraries in front of you where you can kind of just click around. Another thing that we're seeing in the animation space specifically is the CG in particular going overseas. And seeing that kind of different shift. For a long time, it was Disney, DreamWorks, and Pixar were the main companies that had the whole pipeline within their studio. But we've just saw two major studios shift their pipelines into overseas markets. Disney Animation's Canadian studio is new. There's CG jobs over there. Same with DreamWorks. They're now going into a vendor relationship, and Pixar is the only one that has the full pipeline in-house. So that's a huge shift within animation, and it kind of reflects a little bit what's going on with live action, but they were a little bit ahead of it. So some of that live action jobs that you see on set are going overseas, and Skydance isn't different. We film all around the world. And so you're seeing production crews kind of pop up all around the world, and then they come back to Los Angeles. So you're seeing a start in LA, a move to somewhere overseas, and then back to LA to finish the film, which is definitely a shift in the job market and what jobs look like within our spaces. So I think the theatrical streaming stuff still is being figured out and what that looks like now and how do you reach your audiences. And then the other one is jobs are changing and where they sit are changing, and how do we either retain jobs or keep something here that connects them all in so it's turning around the globe.
Yes. So if I can add to all of these amazing responses, because it gave me a chance to reflect on the three portions and the areas that you work. And I noticed, back to the data that was given earlier in this kind of pivoting towards live events. We came out of COVID, we've had these strikes, we're currently going through an economic thing. People want to be in real world spaces. And I think as it pertains to educational development and trying to figure out how we're going to position these students into roles, you can kind of say like runaway production is like AI. It's like if a production is going out of the country, it's almost like utilizing AI. So those are factors, but it's also like, okay, so we have X amount of children coming into the workforce. How are we going to make them specialists, sort of like boutique quality skilled labor that also, and one of the things that I've been pushing in my programs is telling students to learn about contracts, finances, and learn about production development. Because, we have to kind of change the narrative of putting more butts in seats is what I just call it. It's like we have the streaming models where if like, my mom has Netflix and she has 5 of us on her account, they're only getting paid once. But if we can get people into a theater to either see a real thing, and mind you, the data on like themed entertainment spaces, theme spaces, Disney, one of the big hires, and they said it in the data, a lot of those employees are in person, the theme parks. So those real world spaces are very important because they're also utilizing immersive environments, VR, AR, stuff like that, which the content can be created by our workforce that is developing. I guess I'll leave it there.
Well, thank you. I think all of you make great points and just kind of gave us a better perspective of where some of the trends are emerging and where it's leading to. So appreciate everyone's feedback. I think the next topic we want to dive into is workforce development. In the data that was presented, one of the major data points that I saw was that one, there's not many entry-level positions. So one, how do we prepare to that? And then two, let's diversify the industry. With that being said, it's understanding what's going on, right? I think that's a big component of workforce development. So the question, and I want to keep it with you, Dionisio, is considering the rapid involvement of the entertainment landscape, what are the most in-demand skills or qualifications you're hiring for right now? And I know you mentioned a few skills, but you can dive deeper so then the faculty here can get some more insights.
Thank you so much. One of the first things I show students, at when I'm teaching at the CTE and my internship is getting them on project management software, because first of all, they all know how to use their computers, like Slack, and they all know how to communicate. And it's just kind of like pivoting them just a hair over to understanding working in teams, which they already like to do. They really kind of fundamentally have that intuitively. It's just a matter of like organizing it in a way where it's like, oh wow, well, this is what a project is. So the project management stuff is kind of important, because even if they don't go into our field, they can use that in other fields like plumbing, electricians, all that stuff. Secondly, entry level wise, I really think the hands-on experience that they're getting with CTE programs, and I've discussed this. I just graduated from the Harbor Freight Tools for Schools program, where we were learning how to develop pilots for schools that can be scaled out laterally across the U.S. because LA is not the only place where we're having issues; it's across the U.S. And in all skilled trades. So getting them hands-on with stuff, because then they're tactile and they're learning how to make quality cuts in wood. They're learning how to measure stuff, and they're working in that team environment. One of the things that I want to be developing more of is the live entertainment crews, because if you're starting out at an entry-level point, and where I see it, a lot of these students, if they're able to like work in a hands-on environment, they usually pick that up pretty quickly, and then they can pivot back to or reverse engineer the more difficult issues. I also like to show them programs like Twinmotion and Blender, and getting them familiar with gaming engines, so that way they're just familiar with that environment.
Thank you. That was great. Different platforms that you mentioned that I think would be beneficial. And Whitney, I know you're the director of talent acquisition, so you've probably seen some trends change and kind of some of the skills that are required are different now. Any specific insight on some of the demand skills or qualifications that you're looking for currently?
It depends on the role that you're talking to me about. So if you were going to talk to me about a creative artistic role like visual development or storyboarding, I feel like across the board, most schools teach the programs and the expectations around them. No, AI is not there yet with us requiring it, and I don't think it'll be there for a little bit. So we've got a little bit of time on that one, but it's usually like those Photoshop, If you have like Toon Boom, Storyboard Pro, however you kind of get that stuff done. Blender's really big in visual development, but I feel like students kind of learn that and get access to it in some way. Like Blender's a free program. But then on the other side of it, for like production assistants, which I think is like a universal entry level role, for our teams, we don't necessarily look for them to have certain systems under their belt. Like if you're entry level, we are willing to teach you what that system is, even though if you have it, it's nice. Like we use ShotGrid, which is now called Flow. But Google Sheets, Excel, just having some type of understanding of those is super helpful. I think what I find with a lot of entry level candidates that are trying to break into the admin side is because we're such a creative industry, a lot of them know mostly about the roles of like director, writer, artist. They want to go for these really 1% of roles, and they don't understand all the other jobs within it. So when they get into a production assistant interview, they go, well, my dream is to be a director one day. Well, maybe production assistant isn't the track for you if you want to be a director. You will learn a lot in that role, but my producers, and maybe Bryce knows this, will be like, well, don't they want to be a producer one day like me? Like that's the track that they're applying for. So I think sometimes students aren't aware of all the different avenues that you can go down. And so when they come in so broad, they're always going to lose out to the student that's much more narrow and knows like, I know the different jobs and I could see 3 pathways within this entry level opportunity. Like maybe I want to be production accountant, producer, or maybe go into maybe the studio overhead based on the person that's like, I'm open to anything and maybe director or writer one day. Yeah.
Well, those are great points. I think I want to just hone in on one of the key components that you mentioned. I think that, a lot of the obstacles here in LA County, because we're so vast, is that career exposure, not knowing what opportunities are out there. To your point, there's different pathways to get to the end goal. So I think that that's great understanding of making sure that we work with the educational institutes to bring that exposure at a younger age and make sure that throughout their educational pathway, that's something that they understand. Bryce, Lauren, I know you are a co-lead on the Puppeteer Mentorship Program, so I'm sure you probably have some insights on some of the demand skills or qualifications that a lot of these companies are looking to hire for.
Yeah, I just do want to talk about what Ann Whitney said about as far as like the production assistants, because since I do hire the PAs here at Sesame Workshop and for the show particularly, they do come in with the same, I want to be a director, I want to be the executive producer, or I want to be a writer on the show. And I can say here at Sesame, there is flexibility within that. Like, our former executive producer was once an intern here at Sesame, and he also directs. He's currently a director on Sesame Street. So he's been here for, quite some time, but, there is a way to get there on here at Sesame Street. And then there's some of the writers also. There are some producers that are also writers on the show as well, but they were once interns, and that kind of tells folks about the environment here at Sesame. Like no one leaves, everyone's here. I've been here for about 7 years, and a lot of people consider me a newbie because a lot of folks have been here for like 20 plus years. So I can say what, not really a skill, but I think for as far as our PAs, what I look for is like folks that are just willing to learn everything and anything, and they're open to doing everything as a PA, and just excited to, because sometimes when you do interview students, they have this, they're very narrow, right? So it's like, okay, I get it. I love that for you. And yes, you can dream big, but as a production assistant, here are a couple of things that you will be doing. And as long as they're game for it, then absolutely would love to hire them. If they are like, well, this is what I want to do. And you do get folks that are like that. I think that's not something that I'm looking for in a PA. Yeah. kind of tough, but that's just, you know, how I look at things. And then as far as going for our puppeteer mentorship program here, it's very niche, right? I don't know if anyone knows any puppeteers personally, but there's not many puppeteers. So I think for our mentorship program, we, you know, did a lot of postings all over, and unfortunately not a lot of people applied. So then it ended up me having to stalk folks on like social media and like typing in hashtag puppeteer to see where folks were. And, you know, we do have some puppeteers that live in LA and kind of all over the United States. So when we are shooting content here at Kauffman, you know, we're flying them in, you know, to shoot content for us, which is kind of nice. But it's hard, you know, puppeteering is not an easy feat, even though it does seem like it might be something easy. It's pretty hard. Holding up your arm for about 30 minutes for a take is a lot, but there's also more to it. But, you know, I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of puppeteering.
Thank you, Bryce Lauren. Michael, I think your perspective of some of the skills and qualifications might be different. So very excited to hear your component of that.
Yeah, I think maybe I may be a little bit biased. I agree with Dionisio that, you know, any project management, time management skills, they're highly valued. If there's opportunity for students to learn that and, you know, be certified in that early on, I think it's a huge advantage for an entry-level position. But really soft skills are extremely valuable as well. So, you know, arguably maybe it's not something necessarily you could learn or be taught, but the ability to be agile, be a self-starter or self-learner, be naturally curious, you know, investigative of your role, how to make things efficient within your role, the duties you're given. Even if you are a PA, you know, you're delivering coffee to set, you know, finding the best route, the best opportunity to make things, you know, improve time efficiency as much as possible. And then the other soft skill I would imagine, at least for electric, is just cross-functional collaboration across many different departments. I think filmmaking is inherently collaborative. You know, you need to work with many different departments and many different personalities. But I find that those who tend to advance, you know, faster than others are those who, you know, have been able to adapt to that skill of, hey, I need to be kind of a servant leader. I need to work with other departments, work to their needs. That might benefit, you know, both departments' needs simultaneously. So it's really a combination of having the technical skill, but also the people skills to really navigate their space they're in. And I think that's, you know, I don't think that ever really changes.
You know, I think that's kind of something that goes across all industries that has been brought up in our different advisories, is the need for soft skills. And we know, you know, the pandemic did affect a lot of our next generation. So, you know, it's good to hear that, you know, Michael, on your perspective, that's still a key component. And I think it's, to your point, something that has never changed. But, you know, the understanding that we probably needed to hone in on some of those soft skills to kind of continue get into the entry level positions or continue to grow. So thank you for that. I want to go next to Bryce Lauren for my last question. I know you mentioned a lot of, you know, you're open to hiring production assistants. So my question is, how do you upskill your current teams? What's working and where are the gaps? So let's say you do get that individual who comes in as a product, you know, assistant. How do they continue to move up within Sesame? So do you guys currently have any programs, or just kind of open to hearing that?
Yeah, so we currently, I think, I'm not sure if folks heard, like Sesame is looking for a new home. That was in the news, and it's still in the news currently. So there's currently no programs right now, but we do hire PAs for when we're shooting content and shooting for the season. So sorry, what was the question again? Sorry, I got like sidetracked for a second.
No, so just kind of, no worries. How do you upskill your current teams?
Yes, got it. I think similar to what Michael said, I think the collaboration, I think the cross collaboration across different departments. So all of our PAs get to work literally in every department. So it's like the art department, if they're in production, like the working with our producers, working with our writers, the script department, production management, that's a big one as well. So all of our PAs they switch every week on what department that they get to work in, which I think is very helpful because I think they get to see, is this something that they actually do want to, work down the line or not, which is nice because I feel like when I was a PA, and I've PA'd at several different places, but primarily when I was a PA at The View, I didn't have that opportunity to, see exactly where I wanted to go. And I kind of had to make that opportunity for myself to see like, okay, yeah, I definitely want to be a producer. I love the creative of things. But I do think it is important for schools and, companies in general should have that cross collaboration amongst entry-level folks to kind of see what exactly that they do want to work in down the line.
Thank you. And Whitney, curious to see if you have within your organization any current upskilling programs or if it's something that's already a model that's working. If there's any gaps, maybe you don't, and something that the community college can be a solution for.
Well, a lot of our entry level folks, whether they're creative or kind of in the production or overhead routes, you have a lot of experienced people around them that naturally a mentorship happens, but you do have to create a mentorship culture within your environment in order for that to actually flourish. So there is ownership on the company's part to create that space. We also have a talent development department that does like workshops and things. And when I worked at NBC Universal, it was a lot more robust because they're a much larger company. I know that Disney and the ones that you were kind of naming as the big ones definitely all have that structured in there. And so we also have that. So they kind of work on upskilling, or if they see a gap, they'll do like an offsite day to kind of help teach people. So there's that. I think it's like a culture of mentorship and then also trying to support that mentorship culture by adding kind of internal departments that kind of lift up from there. Now, that being said, where the gaps are is those departments that help support those growth opportunities are sometimes the first to get cut in studios, or they're the leanest teams within. So it's really nice when, again, if you see a studio that's really emphasizing that importance and aren't cutting those teams, you know that it's probably a pretty healthy culture within that. In terms of gaps for growth, I think in every production, it's a lot, there's crunchy times and a go, go, go. And so there might not be, sometimes juniors don't feel like there's that space, but then kind of stepping back and giving them areas where they can voice that space, or when there's breaks or slowdowns, that you take the time to really help mentor and guide them when you have those opportunities. So like when those soft skills that everyone is mentioning, taking those beats and kind of knowing when to ask for those mentorships is a big one. So hopefully that answers your question kind of internally.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you. Michael, any insights on the question?
Yeah, I mean, we are at Electric, we're a fairly small independent production company and post-production distribution house. So unfortunately, we don't have the current systems available. I think traditionally you might have at a Lionsgate or a Disney to kind of internally upskill, interns or entry level employees. But I would say that because we are much smaller, there is much more opportunity for transparency and exposure to a lot of the different departments that we do have within development, within post-production. Admittedly, it's more out of necessity rather than, trying to upscale and get them cross-trained. But again, because we're smaller and leaner, there is more of an opportunity for someone who's entry level to dive headfirst in with, assistant editor or an editor, hands-on, side by side, and to make mistakes in real time and be corrected in real time and get that feedback so they can, maybe not necessarily mature faster, but just be able to learn from mistakes faster and then move on to the next level, potentially faster within our own company or in the next company.
Thank you, Michael. That real world experience, it's definitely instrumental in any work that you do. And Dionisio, any thoughts on the question of upskilling, any models that currently work on your end?
Thank you. Yes, and I like what Michael was just saying, and of course, you know, and Whitney and Bryce. I concur with a lot of those elements. I think I have a very unique position in that, you know, I have a company. I'm really involved in my union, and I'm also dealing in the education sphere. So I think about very often when I am dealing with the students, how can I upskill them? I have this philosophy of just like get them into any company, you know, because I know that our company being the host for the interns, even though I would love to hire all of them, if we can get them into each one of your companies, we still have a connection with those students throughout their careers. And as they grow and develop, and they help, you know, move Michael's company forward and go work at Sesame Street and expand the opportunities there. Maybe they create a new product, maybe they create a new technology. They're going to be influenced, and they might circle back to us in the future. And we'll also know that we have had that space with them. So it's about mentoring. It's a lot about mentoring. So, you know, where the small crew that we have, having, you know, that engagement with those students and really kind of helping them, you know, I know that we can tend to get a little like uh, uh territorial, or even like not wanting them to go out. You know, it's like, oh yeah, in the company space. As far as like mentors, we're like, go out and do the best that you can. But like, I'm looking for ways to get them into our union. You know, I'm looking for ways to get them into our company. That would be the best goal. But if they can't work for my company, I'd love to get them into your guys' companies, because just knowing that they're out, and then they're having, unfortunately, they're dealing with the same problems we are, and they're helping us come up with those solutions, because, you know, that's how we mentor them. It's just like, oh, see, you get it too. It's tough here, isn't it? How can we work together? What, because I have faith that because they're younger, they might be a little bit more optimistic, or just have the capacity, the energy capacity to come up with solutions that we are already, you know, like me in my old age, like I'm like already, you know, giving up, you know. It's like every time I see the students, I'm like, ah, well, you know, they're not there yet. They're still, you know, they, for having to go through COVID and having lost that time. You know, the first internship that we did was in the heart of COVID, and I still have lunch with my student. He's 22 years old now, and he, you know, he and I still have collaboration, because I'm still asking him, what are you doing now? You know, and he does not work in our industry, but he gives me fresh ideas of how to deal with the students. So it's just that circular thing. I don't know if that really answered the question, but you know, I mean, it's there. So thank you.
No, no, those are great points. You know, I think a key component that everyone mentioned is the importance of mentorship and real world experience. So I think those are crucial components of upskilling. And again, the community colleges are a solution. If there's models that once we continue this work to figure out how we can build those, we'll definitely have conversation. I'd like to bring in my colleague Alicia to moderate the next topic, which I think it's in everybody's mind, which is AI. So Alicia, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jose. Yeah, I know it was mentioned quite a few times already, so I kind of wanted to dive right into it. But can we maybe talk about how emerging technology, such as AI, automation, or new digital platforms, how they're really transforming the entertainment industry, and what strategies that your organizations are using to stay ahead and adapt to these challenges? I kind of wanted to ask Michael, I know you mentioned it before.
Yeah, of course. I think it's a great question. It's, you know, it makes a lot of it makes everyone nervous, you know, when we kind of discuss AI holistically. And like I said, it's not really restricted specifically to generative AI. I kind of think of it from maybe students who are kind of diving into this business because they wanted to be content creators, or they already are content creators, and they want to hone that skill and become part of that who, make it big, right? But for analytics, understanding how, you can understand your own content, understand how performance trends either on YouTube or across wherever you distribute it. One of the key things that we look at across streaming, Electric Now, we're delivered over 4 dozen different platforms, and each of those platforms, they have their own specific language of how they report out viewership and metrics and different pieces of analytics. So it's a lot to aggregate and to understand, and then deliver that information to all our stakeholders, those who are going to get royalties or participations, those who just need to understand, as from a writing perspective, what series or episodes are working, which ones aren't working, what the fall off is. And I think it kind of starts incrementally. As a younger content creator, you're putting stuff on Instagram Reels or YouTube, having that natural or wanting to understand, hey, how's my own content working against the algorithm? People are dropping off within the first 30 seconds. Why is that? Maybe I can adjust my own writing to improve that. Or maybe there's a way that I can implement, AI technology, that can help me understand analytics a little bit better so I can respond a little bit faster. Some of the other AI integrations that we're looking have explored within our own company is just localization. So things that we can help produce content overseas. If we have an audience maybe that's in South Africa or in Southeast Asia, but we don't have the resources to dub content, maybe there's a way to quickly transcribe subtitles, so we can deliver to those audiences quickly. I don't think AI is quite there yet, but I think for new students within filmmaking programs, for them to understand, like, this is a potential market that they can investigate and learn into. It's not necessarily like the glitz and glamour of generative AI and let's create something like visually stimulating that may or may not look real, but it's how can I improve a process to really serve a market that really has a unique need, and it's really about efficiency overall. So I would really, I know when AI kind of gets thrown in the mix of the entertainment industry, a lot of people kind of like want to shy away and are really hesitant. But I think there's so many different doors and opportunities that will add to new jobs, that we need to consider.
No, I think that's a really great point that you made, using AIs more as a tool to understand it, to maybe help your business grow within that. So I think that's important, and hearing your perspective from that. Bryce, I know you had also mentioned a little bit about AI, so do you want to maybe talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I feel like Michael kind of covered exactly like what I wanted to say about AI, like, using it as a tool, as a reference, right? It can do all these things, right? Scripts, visual effects, all the things, right? But it still needs the human touch. So I think that part about it is like having students, have fun, play with it if you can, like whatever tools that are out there. And then, like Michael said, using what you're learning from this AI tool and how can it better be more efficient for you and the team. I think that's my take on AI. It gets a little scary because, especially because I work with talent gets nervous and they're like, whoa, wait, hold on. Like, we don't ever say it on set. It's like, don't say the word, don't bring it around talent. But there's some good things about it, and, use it as a tool. That's my go-to for it.
No, that's a great point that you made. And I think it's really valid to understand, not to be so scared about it, but how do we mitigate it and use it so that we can understand it better? And Winnie, do you have any takes on this as well?
Yeah, I agree with what the other two said. It's going to end up being a tool. It's not going to go away. That being said, because I work at a little bit of a larger media company, we have a very traditional approach where don't use it at all in anything yet, until copyright is figured out. And so what we're noticing with students is schools are teaching it and we get it. Like, we get why they're teaching it, but the foundational skills of the arts needs to still be there, and they can't take other people's work, and we catch it a lot. So I think students think that we don't catch it, but we totally do. And I actually was speaking to a recruiter at Lucasfilm who someone did get hired using AI in their demo reel. And then when they got on the job, they couldn't perform the task. And then they showed them the demo reel and goes, "Where is this?" And they go, "Oh, this was AI." And you can't use it on the job in that way. So I think generative AI, you have to be really careful if you're a student and do it in an ethical way because you wouldn't like other people taking your art and then working off of it. Now, if you start using it as a tool to speed up your own process with your own artistic voice, that's really smart. I think we are seeing human machine learning in other areas of the pipeline. Spider-Verse 2 used it for ink lines, but it was not generative AI. It was a tool to help speed along the process that still needed a human touch. And I think you'll see that more and more in animation where it'll be a tool that will be linked, like Houdini is experimenting with it right now, which will help the animation and speed up the animation process. It doesn't mean jobs are going away. It just means it'll move a lot faster. So it'll be interesting to see how it continues. But I think the part that a lot of people are scared of is that early script, artistic kind of area where there is a lot of copyright issues with that still need to be worked out. And the tool area, I think people are less worried about, but because it's so associated with the generative AI and where people are stealing content, um, they kind of get meshed together because there's not really an understanding of it just yet. So it's important for, I think, students to eventually learn it because it's going to be something that's going to be a part of it, but they have to be really cautious on how they learn it and where they're getting it.
I also wanted to add in really quick. So even I completely agree with Ann Whitney as well, just on the creative perspective of AI. Even from the operational side as well, it can't be a tool that's completely relied on 100%. I mean, I kind of equate it to, maybe growing up for some of us, relying on calculators to solve math problems, right? But we need to have the fundamental skill set to understand when the answer we're given or the solution we're given is incorrect. So if you have a student who's learning AI to improve operational efficiency, they still need to have that foundational skill set to know when it's wrong, and to make corrections and make the right assumptions and make the best decisions moving forward. So I don't think that is ever going to go away. I think for the student who has a fundamental understanding of, how to do their job well without it, but now they suddenly have this additional tool to help them be more efficient, I think that is really, and I think that's what Ann Whitney is also saying as well, too.
No, yeah, those are both valid points. That makes sense. Dionisia, I know, do you have any insights on this as well?
Yeah, and I'll try to be brief about it. So, I think it's been covered very, very well with what Michael and Ann Whitney and Bryce have said. I can just add that from the Art Directors Guild perspective, we're dealing with a large segment of our membership that is very concerned about the generative AI portion of this. But I also agree completely with Michael as far as, when you're using it as a tool for data and analytics, and even like Ann Whitney was saying about Houdini and using it just to fill in. I mean, we've been using AI for a long time now. The whole stock market goes off of AI, and stuff like that. So I think when it comes to the education conversation, it's important to the ethics. It's like instilling young students with the ethics, which has already been mentioned. Saying like, you can do this, work with it as a tool set, like Ann Whitney said, learn how to utilize it, but also know the back end side of stuff, because it's sort of lifeless to me. And I've seen the generative AI visuals, and it's just like, it's cringy. And I think in the entertainment industry, it's all fastest to market. So like a lot of it is getting snuck in there. So, can we just instill the ethics at a younger level so that way they're not overly reliant on it? And that was a nice catch with the Lucasfilm thing when they caught that. That's what happens when somebody tries to use it and then they don't have the skill set. you know, and then it kind of like inhibits their career a little bit because it actually puts them like 2 steps back. So yeah, I'll leave it like that.
No, I think, and Winnie, sorry, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, well, then they get a reputation. And we're talking about relationships, soft skills, and you get that ding against you. And the other recruiter is friends with me and calls me up and says, "Can you believe what happened?" It's a ding. So that two
Yeah,
steps
yeah.
back is a big deal.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Using it as a tool, but in an ethical way that you're able to understand it, and using it maybe as an operational ways for it. So thank you for sharing that. And I think kind of wanted to pivot into what a lot of people have talked about and mentioned is like building equitable pipelines within the entertainment industry. So I kind of wanted to kind of pivot to what Luke said, how the community colleges have that talent supply side. So my question is, how can community colleges really play a stronger role in helping fill those talent gaps that you might have within your organization? Dioniso, would it be okay if you started off first?
Sure. How can community colleges fill the
How can community colleges play a stronger role in helping fill talent gaps?
oh, and feel well, I think it's having the open relationships with the I think industry is really bad at connecting with I'm speaking from our guild's experience. You know, I'm involved at the professional development level, and I see how our peers, a lot of us want to be in the education sphere, and a lot of us have a bad time at doing it. Maybe it's just past habits, because I was just at the Entertainment Equality Consortium on Friday last week over at the Coliseum, and it was like all of our industry peers, and you know, you had all the unions there, and you had Disney and a lot of companies, and I think I don't know, maybe this is just my perspective, might have a kind of like top-down approach. So we talk at students a lot, and I think we need to do a better job at, you know, really being like understanding what this system is. So I think we need to, industry need to have a better relationship with the education system. I'm currently, you know, at the ADG side, we're currently in talks with Cal State LA about aligning their existing programs with what is coming out of LA City College, LA Trade Tech, East LA College, feeding into Cal State, and then how does that feed into what we need at the ADG side? And then also company wise, I'm thinking, well, you know, I'm seeing a big gap here with live events. Why aren't we developing more people to go into that? Because not a lot of the students at Cal State have any hands-on experience doing anything in a live events area because they're so focused on film. So that's another thing. We kind of like get a little blindered, you know, and we don't see the I came from themed entertainment. When I started in this industry, I started out doing work for Disney at the theme parks, and then I pivoted into film and television. A lot of my peers that went to four-year colleges, went to design school, they've been in film and that's all they know. They don't know how to work in a themed entertainment environment. They might not even, some of them don't know how to work in theaters, but so they don't have this like ambidextrous ability to kind of, you know, see in other markets. And I think we just need to start expanding out, because we expect that of our students. You know, we expect that of the students to be like, oh, you got to know how to work in these other fields, but then they get really blinded once they get in the industry, because it takes so much to get into that industry. So you know, the inclusivity of being more mentored and more hands-on, and I guess just, you know, having a better relationship with industry. I don't know if that really answered the question, but that's just my feelings on it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I think it's really important why we're here today at this advisory, to really open that line of communication and to really understand and talk to employers and get the communication within colleges to really align better too. I will open it to Michael, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. I think specifically with electric, because we are such a small community, the opportunities to, help fill those talent gaps may be limited. I mean, opportunities may be less than a dozen within a year period, and then, we try to shoot for longevity as much as possible, within the company. I don't know if this answers your question directly, but one other opportunity is exposure. So I participate in a lot of streaming, I suppose, networking events, working with other platforms, and coordinating with other, not necessarily competitors, but other companies that are within the same space. But the DEG, the Digital Entertainment Group, OTT, over the top delivery streaming networks, they host regularly, if not monthly, I know at least annually, events where it's really just platforms to gather together to discuss current issues within the streaming space. Potentially, if community colleges were to kind of leverage that opportunity, just to give their students more exposure, that one, we exist. I think streaming is a young industry, or a young part of the industry. Fast is even younger. It's only been around about 5 to 6 years. So within the industry itself, not many people really understand the complexity and the nuance of free, and subscriber SVOD, AVOD content and distribution. So I think giving the students that exposure to different, events within the streaming community, informing the streaming community that there are students who are interested, that don't necessarily just want to be directors and writers, but they actually want to learn a little bit more about the back end and distribution. That would be extremely helpful. Because sometimes I don't necessarily need someone to be, working at my company. I need them to be at another company, because I still need, whatever operational efficiency. We don't have the resources to do it in-house. We need it to exist somewhere else and get that support somewhere else.
No, that's valid. I think exposure and networking is so important for folks within the industry to be aware of what's going on, for students, for community colleges, for employers. So thank you for sharing that. And Whitney?
I don't know if it directly addressed the question of like how community colleges can fill gaps, but I do think we have kind of a demographics issue within the entertainment industry, that community college could really help with. But I'm going to be a little bit odd or maybe harsh, so forgive me if I offend anyone. But what I do see in kind of the community state school space is a lack of relationships, which others have mentioned on this call. And entertainment, I call it a very like glittery, sparkly industry, will always have people trying to get into it. And so creating a space for our local students to get into it and compete against all these people that are going to maybe more private schools where they are in our ears constantly. Like USC probably emails me once a month, just maintaining the relationship there, letting me know who their students are that they're really liking. And so they have this foundational skill set within the industry that they're directly connected into trying to get their students in. And I see a lack of that from the community colleges here. And you could put it on the studios, but it's also kind of this two-way thing that happens. And the studios, we are for profit. I posted an assistant job the other day. Within a week, I had over 2,000 applications. I took it down and it's done. So I have things coming in. So the effort has to come a little bit from the other side too, because I'm dealing with other things in my job. And so finding those ways to get students in front of us and develop those relationships early on. And then I want to go back all the way to like Jose's question of like the gaps. There's also gaps in resume classes, how to write a cover letter, how to network with the industry, where are spaces that they can get in and start networking. Animation has a lot of women in animation, Latinx in animation, Asians in animation, Afro animation, and those groups are directly connected with us and can help build on those relationships. So if the schools can't do it, you should be teaching your students about maybe the organizations in the community that they're trying to get into to help them. Like educating in that way, and also pulling from internally in the studio, like our artists. So, for example, I have a director that I used to work with who teaches a storyboarding class. And every semester, she sends me all her students a list of who she's taught, and I will meet with each one of them. But I'm not getting that from community colleges. So maybe pulling from the people that are working and having them placed to help with those relationships. So I guess the relationship gap is definitely there, and how can we meet each other in that?
No, thank you for sharing that. I think that's really important to hear from the community colleges to build that relationship, and why this advisory is also just really important to have that first initial talk and like understanding of what's happening as well. Bryce, do you have any insights on this as well?
Yeah, I think teaming up with like collectives within the industry, because I also have an organization called Black Women in TV and Film. And I think that's super important to tap into those collectives and partner with these community colleges. I think another thing that I notice a lot with LinkedIn, a lot of students from like these Ivy League or private university and colleges, they're very quick to send me an email to have an informational, and I say yes to all of them. Like I don't pick and choose, but it would be nice if like there were folks that were in community colleges, state colleges reaching out. I would be more compelled to give them more of an informational, just because I also went to a city college in New York. I went to Hunter. So I know what it's like competing with like NYU and like USC and all these other, UPenn, all these other colleges. And a lot of the workers here at Sesame, or employees here, they all did go to like prestigious universities. And I'm always like, I went to Hunter and I'm very proud of it. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, and also for always being open to meet with students. I think that's really important to really pave that way forward, and like to talk to students about some of the opportunities that are there. So I have one last final question, and then we're gonna open it up for anybody else on the call if they want to talk to you all. But my last question is, how can entertainment industry really build more inclusive workplaces that not only attract diverse talent, but also fosters long-term retention and career growth? And I'm just going to open it up to anybody who has any insights, perspectives that they want to share about.
I don't think there's a lack of people wanting to get into this industry from all different cultures, races, everything. It's the other side of the spectrum where it's like, because we saw it in the data, it's like there's a large amount of underrepresented communities, and then you see the actual people that are getting hired. So of course we all know about nepotism in our industry, and so how do we break that? At our union side, we're trying to figure out how to break that, because the only way you can get in is if you worked on a production for 30 days or you're on a show that flips. So how do you be in that to begin with? And I believe that, and to our last question, having students from underrepresented schools, I've gone to numerous design showcases at Art Center, Otis, UCLA, because like Ann Whitney said, they're constantly barraging us with, come over here, and personally, I have a really great relationship over at LA City College. Dr. Amar Palkana, he's really opened the doors for us. Cal State LA, we host the EagleCon every year. So we are trying to get more of the student body from those schools, but also it doesn't turn into real, like we're still struggling with the data, with the into analytics. How do we get more people? And I feel like through internships, and that's changing, because like the program that I have, it's like 90% underrepresented communities. We're trying to get mostly, last year we had, it was still only, I think, 48% female, and we market it towards young girls because we wanted them building, and that was part of our pitch to Harbor Freight last year, was that we were going to focus on getting girls into the program. And still, out of all the kids that applied, there was only 4 girls that wanted to, 4 out of the 9 students that we had last year were young ladies. Now, this year, hopefully it'll be more. I'm going tomorrow to do our final interview. It seemed like we got a lot of interest, but it was about 90% minority students. That was great, and they're learning skills, and they're doing really cool stuff. But I think the hiring side, somehow we need to just break that old nepotism model.
Alicia, you probably saw me speak about this at Lightbox. Coming from the more corporate space, you're probably seeing a lot of rollbacks around DEIA programming. It's a real thing. And again, it goes to those overhead departments that are cut first. And then you also have to consider that the federal government is coming after those programs and investigating those programs. So there's that factor going on. But I think when I was speaking at the other event, it really comes from the top. I think it's really easy to go after hiring processes, which there definitely is a gap there. Sometimes you don't get those traditional resumes. That's why resume workshops are really important. Or there's not a focus on transitional skills or coming from another industry and where that can go from there. There's definitely an opening up, but it's also hiring manager from the top education on those things. And I think that there's a lack of that in the industry, and you also have to hold the top accountable to dwindle that within their teams and set that expectation. So it's a really tough question, and I'm always like curious to hear what other people's solutions are, because there's definitely ideas that everyone brings forward, but I think actions speak a lot louder than words. And so seeing those actions within your team and encouraging it is really, really important. And for me, a lot of the times it's when I'm working with a hiring manager that is open and ready for those conversations and create space.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty difficult question, but I personally feel, just from my personal experience, it's a lot about economic disparity. A lot of entry-level positions, internship positions, not all, but a lot of companies offer unpaid internships or unpaid entry-level positions. And frankly, just from my experience, I wasn't able to afford to take an unpaid internship. There are definitely, arguably some demographics I could, and maybe that was reflective in the data that we saw earlier today. But I think one step to increase, the potential for an inclusive workplace is to raise the entry-level wage, the internship, kind of getting rid of this idea of unpaid internships. And maybe that's not realistic for a lot of the smaller companies or larger production houses. But one, offset that community colleges can do or universities can do is really just, although the students are preparing for an entry-level position, I don't think any true entry-level position is really just blank slate with no skill set. I think the more that a college can prepare the student to be multifaceted, to be able to pivot, to be agile, to a variety of different roles, because that's just the reality. At least, what I experience over the last 20, 25 years of working through, production and producing, that you need to know a lot of different departments, and you need to be able to wear a lot of different hats, even if you are entry level. And then when that's recognized, then you will, guarantee your place and continue to kind of rise through the ranks. But I think to answer your question immediately, I think it's a pay disparity. We need to increase from the industry side. We need to increase the entry level wage. That will open up more opportunity for frankly, people who look like me trying to break into the industry. But then also, equipping, students who go to community colleges to be more multifaceted, to understand not just what's trending today, but what could potentially be a problem 5 years from now. Because by the time they graduate and enter the workforce, they already are starting to think of solutions to problems that are just now happening, working with the legality of generative AI, or how to make something a little bit more ethical and integrate, a better process flow. So yeah, it's definitely a complicated problem.
I think the only thing that I'm going to share is that I think Ann Whitney touched upon it, but holding these organizations accountable to have diversity plans, DEIA plans in place, and them actually meeting it. Because, I shouldn't be the only Black producer on the show, and Sesame is an amazing place and the culture is amazing, but that shouldn't be it. Kids that come on the show should be able to see themselves reflected in everyone that's, whether it's behind the camera, in front of the camera, in the control room, and all the things. So I do think it just goes back to holding folks that do have the ability to make these decisions. Yeah, because, there has been progress somewhat made in the sense of the junior level roles, right? But when it comes to those decision makers, there's not much diversity at the top. So, yeah. This is I'm very passionate about this kind of stuff, and it drives me insane. Looking at the demographic, I was almost sick to my stomach, because when you go into these places, when you walk on set, and not just here, but just other places, you see it, right? It's right in your face. Yeah, we got to just keep on pushing and holding folks accountable, because this is not okay.
I'm picking off of Michael and Bryce one more time. It's the entry level is getting better, but it's a pyramid almost, and as it narrows, for some reason, that just above middle management is not being broken into, and it's definitely an internal thing, and there needs to be some type of recognition or training around it, because I think people acknowledge it, but if you're not action on it, then it's really tough. And then the economic problem is 100% a thing, and I could see it very much affecting the community college base, and that's why it's coming down to holding people accountable. The Warner CEO took a huge pay bonus, but his PAs are making $20 an hour, and that's not a livable wage in Los Angeles. So it's where and Disney, who has the theme park employees, I also came from that space and then grew from there. It was not a livable wage, couldn't afford food, had to go and look elsewhere and pivot from there. Universal, NBC also has a theme park in Los Angeles. They're a little bit higher than minimum wage. They actually, some of their staff in the parks make more than PAs that are considered sometimes a higher skill set than some people in the parks. But again, even that extra $2 they make above PAs is still not livable. And they're accounting for a lot of that workforce.
No, thank you for sharing. I think these are all really great valid points that we need to really consider and take in, and how do we really mitigate that? I know we're already right on time, so I'm sorry we won't have any other questions. But we would be happy to share the lookbook as well as the video recording to all the folks that registered. And if you have any questions, and if the employers are also interested, leaving their emails, we're happy to also connect the folks together. But we're so thankful for everybody that came today. I hope everybody has a wonderful day, and thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, everybody.